A while back, I did a video on my personal top 10 rock lyricists, and it didn't take long for me to realize that 10 was a woefully inadequate number to deal with that subject. So I'm going to remedy that situation now and do a part 2. And quite honestly, in retrospect, several of the entrants here really should have been in my first video, but better late than never. So let's get into it. This is part 2 of my personal top 10 rock lyricists, presented in alphabetical order. There is no significance to the order of the artists here.
Just let me hear some of that rock and roll music. Any old way you choose it. It's got a backbeat, you can't lose it. Any old time you use it.
Chuck Berry, Exhibit A of artists that I should have included in my first video. I guess being a child of the 70s and 80s, I sometimes get so caught up in the stuff that I grew up with that I forget about the guys who started it all, and Chuck Berry is certainly one. And what better way to start the discussion than Chuck's ode to the genre that he played such a huge role in creating rock and roll music. It's got a backbeat, you can't lose it. Any old time you use it. It's got to be rock and roll music if you want to dance with me. This is clearly one of the first, if not the first, rock and roll songs ever written about rock and roll. But there have been many artists that followed in Berry's footsteps in that regard. I'm thinking of the Rolling Stones, It's Only Rock and Roll, but I like it. Billy Joel's It's Still Rock and Roll to Me, and Bob Seger's Old Time Rock and Roll. You can draw a direct line from rock and roll music to those tunes. Old Time Rock and Roll in particular is strikingly similar, not only in the way that Seger, like Berry, makes it clear that rock and roll is the only music he will dance to, but there's a direct lift. Compare Berry's Don't Care to Hear Him Play a Tango with Seger's Won't Go to Hear Him Play a Tango. Clearly an homage to his rock and roll hero. Berry's lyrics really helped establish the vocabulary of rock lyrics in much the same way that his guitar playing was a blueprint for future rock guitar players. There's no better example than No Particular Place to Go. I mean that opening verse, riding along in my automobile, my baby beside me at the wheel. I stole a kiss at the turn of a mile. What a great line that is. My curiosity running wild. Cruising and playing the radio with no particular place to go. I mean, how many rock and roll songs in the ensuing years have been written on those themes? At first, things are going well for our young protagonist. Cuddling more and driving slow. The night was young and the moon was bold. Finally, the couple decide to take a stroll. Now, I suppose we could take that at face value, but Berry was a great originator of rock and roll euphemisms, so I suggest there's something else going on here. At any rate, things take a very bad turn when the girl's safety belt refuses to unlatch. Do we really have an equipment malfunction here? Or perhaps the young girl has had a sudden change of heart. Hard to say, but either way, the young man is forced to drive all the way home, holding a grudge against the safety belt that wouldn't budge.
Cause he gets up in the morning, then he goes to work at 9. And he comes back home at 5:30, gets the same train every time. Cause his world is built on punctuality, it never fails, and he's all so good.
Kinks lyricist and frontman Ray Davies has always been a very keen observer of society, particularly British society. The Kinks have been described as the most adamantly British of all the British invasion bands of the early to mid-60s. Many of Davies' songs are really just compact character studies, and I want to discuss two of my favorites here. Both paint very vivid pictures of two very different types of characters that Davies had encountered along the way in his native England. We've already heard a little bit about our first character, a well-respected man, goes to work at the same time on the same train every day, always keeping up appearances. As the chorus says, he's a well-respected man about town, doing the best things so conservatively. But by the second verse, we begin to suspect that maybe things aren't exactly perfect in this man's life and family. And his mother goes to meetings while his father pulls the maid, and she stirs the tea with counselors while discussing foreign trade, and she passes looks as well as bills with every suave young man. But lest anyone think the younger generation was immune to Davies' rapier wit, we get dedicated follower of fashion, which lampoons British fashion culture and the British youth mod culture in general. The mod subculture began way back in 1950s London. At that point, it was centered around fashion and modern jazz, hence the term mods. By the 60s, the music had changed. They were listening to groups like The Who and the Small Faces, but the importance of fashion was still there. A mod would not want to be caught dead wearing an outdated style. As usual, Davies has them pegged perfectly. They seek him here, they seek him there. His clothes are loud but never square. It will make or break him, so he's got to buy the best, 'cause he's a dedicated follower of fashion. They seek him here, they seek him there, in Regent Street and Leicester Square. Everywhere the Carnabetian army marches on, each one a dedicated follower of fashion. Now that phrase Carnabetian army refers to Carnaby Street, long the center of high fashion in London. I believe that's a phrase that was a Ray Davies original, although I'm not sure. Somebody correct me in the comments if that's not the case. Lyricist in the history of popular music. The only thing that kept him off my first top 10 was the rationale that maybe he's not exactly rock. But having reconsidered that, there's plenty of things he did in the mid to late 60s and even beyond that can absolutely be considered rock. So here we go. When asked by journalist Cameron Crowe about the song we just heard, The Times They Are A-Changin', Dylan had this to say: I wanted to write a big song, some kind of theme song with short, concise verses that piled up on each other in a hypnotic way. This is definitely a song with a purpose. I knew exactly what I wanted to say and who I wanted to say it to. The first verse spells out the need to adapt or perish. Come gather round people wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accept it that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, then you'd better start swimming or sink like a stone, for the times they are a-changin'. I love the opening of the second verse. Come writers and critics who prophesize with your pen. Compare that to the modern day keyboard warriors who seem to have all the answers. Dylan warns these types to be careful, but don't speak too soon, for the wheel's still in spin, and there's no telling who that it's namin'. For the loser now will be later to win, for the times they are a-changin'. That's one of a couple very biblical sounding lines compared to Jesus' lines in Matthew. So the last will be first and the first will be last. Verse 3 is aimed squarely at those who hold political power. Come senators, congressmen, please heed the call. I think many of these people think that they're immune to the consequences of their actions and the world that they create, but history has shown that this is not the case. There's a battle outside and it's raging. It'll soon shake your windows and rattle your walls, for the times they are a-changin'. And while that song is a prime example of Dylan's folk period, Like a Rolling Stone was the song that signaled Dylan's controversial transition into rock. You've got the drums, you've got the electric guitar, you've got Al Kooper's incredible Hammond organ part, which apparently was totally improvised. But most importantly, you've got Dylan with his aggressive lyrics and vocal style. When he snarls out, "How does it feel?" in the chorus, you feel personally assaulted. The lyrics, of course, chronicle the tale of someone Dylan calls Miss Lonely, who has been riding for a fall for quite some time, and the fall has come. Once upon a time, you dressed so fine, you threw the bums a dime in your prime, didn't you? People'd call, say, "Beware, doll, you're bound to fall." You thought they were all kidding you. This is the tale of someone who had all the advantages but squandered them. Sent to the finest school, but all she did was get juiced in it, as Dylan hilariously puts it. By the end of the song, he's advising her to pawn her diamond ring. She's hit rock bottom. You used to be so amused at Napoleon in rags and the language that he used. Go to him now, you can't refuse. When you ain't got nothing, you got nothing to lose. You're invisible now, you've got no secrets to conceal. Harsh.
In the morning you go gunning for the man who stole your water, and you fight till he is dawning, but they catch you at the border. And
that, of course, Do It Again, Donald Fagen's brilliant ode to recidivism. Each verse is a separate little vignette which tells a tale about one of the three things that many men have trouble kicking: violence, women, and gambling. Verse 1 is about a killer who avoids prison time, and you fire till he is done in, but they catch you at the border. And the mourners are all singing as they drag you by your feet, but the hangman isn't hanging, and they put you on the street. Yeah, you go back, Jack. Do it again. Wheel turning round and round. The poor character in verse 2 seems to have escaped one toxic relationship only to start another. Clearly this woman is bad news. Then you love a little wild one, but she brings you only sorrow. All the time you know she's smiling, you'll be on your knees tomorrow. And finally, we get the gambling addict in denial. Now you swear and kick and beg us that you're not a gambling man. Then you find you're back in Vegas with a handle in your hand. And incidentally, I think Fagen needs to be commended for having the audacity to rhyme beg us with Vegas, but I think he pulls it off. And following up each verse, tying it all together, we get that great chorus like a mantra. You go back, Jack, do it again, wheel turning round and round. You go back, Jack, do it again. And Deacon Blues has long been another one of my favorites, featuring a classic Fagen character, a dissatisfied suburbanite who dreams of giving up his dreary life to join a jazz band and play saxophone in seedy clubs into the wee hours. Here's a quote from Fagen that makes the whole thing all the more poignant. In truth, I'm not sure the guy actually achieves his dream. He might not even play the horn. It's the fantasy life of a suburban guy from a certain subculture. This guy's never going to quit his 9-to-5. The guy's even already got his own nickname picked out. Learn to work the saxophone. I'll play just what I feel. drink Scotch whiskey all night long, and die behind the wheel. They got a name for the winners in the world. I want a name when I lose. They call Alabama the Crimson Tide. Call me Deacon Blues.
I went to Staten Island, Sharon, to buy myself a mandolin. And I saw the long white dress of love on a storefront mannequin. Big boat chugging back with a belly full of cars.
Is Joni Mitchell rock? I don't know, maybe not. But as I alluded to in my intro, I'm kind of done worrying about making these fine distinctions. She's an incredible lyricist and needs to be discussed. I've always found Joni to be one of the most intensely personal songwriters. We've just heard a little piece of Song for Sharon, which touches on several of the usual Joni themes, failed relationships, and in more general terms, doubt and uncertainty. I can keep my cool at poker, but I'm a fool when love's at stake. Because I can't conceal emotion, what I'm feeling's always written on my face. There's a gypsy down on Bleecker Street. I went to see her as a kind of joke. Then she lit a candle for my love luck, and $18 went up in smoke. That's another thing I love about Joni. In spite of her serious themes, she's not afraid to inject a little humor in every once in a while. A bit further on, we get one of the bleakest verses I can think of. A woman I knew just killed herself. The well was deep and muddy. She was just shaking off futility or punishing somebody. My friends were calling up all day yesterday, all emotions and abstractions. It seems we all live so close to that line and so far from satisfaction. Wow. And then we get perhaps what is the most Joni verse ever written. Doris says, have children. Mama and Betsy say, find yourself a charity. Help the needy and the crippled, or put some time into ecology. Well, there's a wide, wide world of noble causes and lovely landscapes to discover. But all I want to do right now is find another lover. So much wisdom and self-awareness packed into one song. It's amazing. Song for Sharon is definitely a Joni Mitchell deep cut, but everyone knows Big Yellow Taxi, which was inspired by Joni's first trip to Hawaii. She describes flinging open the curtains in the morning, seeing the beautiful green mountains in the distance, but directly below a parking lot as far as the eye could see, which of course gave birth to what is undoubtedly her most famous line, they paved paradise, put up a parking lot. The song is just loaded with great lines. They took all the trees, put them in a tree museum, and they charged the people $1.50 just to see them. But in the final verse, it becomes clear that nature is not the only thing Joni has in mind here. Late last night, I heard the screen door slam, and a big yellow taxi took away my old man. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone?
In my little town, I grew up believing God keeps his eye on us all. And he used to lean upon me.
Not a Paul Simon song that you hear as much these days, but one that I've always dug. That was My Little Town from his Still Crazy After All These Years album. And that tune was special in that it was the long-awaited reunion of Paul Simon with Art Garfunkel. You could probably hear Art singing along there. Whenever I hear that tune, I'm reminded of the classic line by writer Thomas Wolfe, "You can't go home again." I think most of us have had that feeling of visiting the place where we grew up and experiencing an indescribable sensation of sadness and loss. I think this is especially true if you come from a small town, as my family did. As Simon sings in the second verse, "And after it rains, there's a rainbow, and all of the colors are black. It's not that the colors aren't there, it's just imagination they lack. Everything's the same back in my little town." But it's really not the same. If a place doesn't grow and change, it's not being preserved, it's stagnating and decaying, which brings us to the chorus. "Nothing but the dead and dying back in my little town." Moving back into the Simon and Garfunkel days, I've always loved the vivid imagery of America. A song about Simon and his then girlfriend making a trip across the American heartland, like so many others in search of the American dream. I love the little bridge section, laughing on the bus, playing games with the faces. She said the man in the gabardine suit was a spy. I said, be careful, his bow tie is really a camera. Such a nice little touch. That's exactly the kind of goofy thing that you would do if you were a young couple bored to tears on a long train ride. "Toss me a cigarette, I think there's one in my raincoat. We smoked the last one an hour ago." So I looked at the scenery. She read her magazine, and the moon rose over an open field. It's almost cinematic. Can't you just see that scene so clearly in your mind?
I will try not to breathe. I can hold my head still with my hands at my knees. His eyes are the eyes of the old, shivering and bold. I will try not to breathe. This decision is mine. I have lived a full life. These are the eyes that I want you to remember.
That song is just breathtaking, pardon the pun. "Try Not to Breathe" from R.E.M's incredible Automatic for the People album. Now, apparently, that CD was found in Kurt Cobain's boombox in his house after he committed suicide. So there's been lots of speculation that he had been listening to that album before he committed the act. And one wonders if it may have been that particular song, which it turns out is about somebody who has made peace with dying. Of course, we'll never know, but I have to say I can think of far worse ways to go than while listening to beautiful music like that. "I will try not to breathe. I can hold my head still with my hands at my knees. These eyes are the eyes of the old, shiver and fold. I will try not to breathe. This decision is mine. I have lived a full life, and these are the eyes that I want you to remember." The song may be about Michael Stipe's grandmother who passed away around this time. But regardless, we know it's an older person speaking to a younger one, probably a young relative. "I will try not to burden you. I can hold these inside. I will hold my breath until these shivers subside. Just look in my eyes. I will try not to worry you. I have seen things that you will never see. Leave it to memory me. I shudder to breathe." Towards the end of the song, there's a bit more defiance. There's a line that all the lyric sites give as "don't dare me to breathe," but which I swear I've always heard as "damn your degree," which I really want it to be, even though it's probably not, because it conjures up this great image of this person who probably has very little formal education, but is packed with worldly wisdom from a lifetime. Getting impatient with a grandson who's probably a college boy and shaking their fist. "Damn your degree, you don't know half of what you think you do." Another Stipe favorite of mine is "Fall on Me" from the Life's Rich Pageant album. Stipe says it was originally about acid rain, although the lyrics changed quite a bit over time. I love how it doesn't come across heavy-handed like a protest song. As usual, Stipe is very poetic in the pre-chorus and chorus. Buy the sky and sell the sky and tell the sky and tell the sky, don't fall on me. The first verse has a great reference to that old story about Galileo climbing the Leaning Tower of Pisa so that he could drop items of various weight from the top and see if they fell at different rates. There's the problem: feathers, iron, bargain buildings, weights and pulleys. Feathers hit the ground before the weight can leave the air. I always thought that last line was perfect, a beautiful description of what it looks like to watch a feather fall to the ground.
It's a little bit funny, this feeling inside. I'm not one of those who can easily hide. I don't have much money, but boy, if I did, I'd buy a big house where we both could live.
I once saw an interview with John Lennon where he talked about how much he liked that tune, Your Song, and particularly Bernie Taupin's lyrics and the sort of shy boy way that Elton delivers them, sort of talking to himself. If I was a sculptor, and then of course the little chuckle he throws in there, but then again, no, or a man who makes potions in a traveling show. I don't have much money, but boy, if I did, I'd buy a big house where we both could live. We get more of the nervous stammering in verse 4. So excuse me for forgetting, but these things I do. You see, I've forgotten if they're green or they're blue. Anyway, the thing is, what I really mean, yours are the sweetest eyes I've ever seen. The interesting thing is that writing style and vocal delivery has always reminded me a lot of what Lennon himself does on his tune Strawberry Fields Forever. I think I know, I mean, yes, but it's all wrong. That is, I think I disagree. Now, clearly the Beatles were a huge influence on both Elton John and Bernie Taupin, so it's hard to say for sure, but that very well may have been the genesis of this. And I have to talk about Someone Saved My Life Tonight, probably my favorite Elton John song. Now, the interesting thing about this one, of course, the lyrics were written by Taupin, but the song is about an intensely personal episode in Elton's life. His sexuality was still in the closet, and he was about to get married to a woman when a fellow musician friend who went by the name of Long John Baldry talked him out of it. Baldry is the sugar bear referred to in the lyrics. And someone saved my life tonight, sugar bear. You almost had your hooks in me, didn't you, dear? You nearly had me roped and tied, altar-bound, hypnotized, sweet freedom whispered in my ear. You're a butterfly, and butterflies are free to fly. Fly away, high away, bye-bye. The song's title wasn't hyperbole. Apparently, Elton had many suicidal thoughts at this point, and even made one admittedly rather half-hearted attempt. In verse 2, we get the idea that Elton's music is the only thing that kept him going. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. Damn it, listen to me good. I'm sleeping with myself tonight. Saved in time. Thank God my music's still alive. I decided to start this discussion with a great old Aerosmith tune that kind of flies under the radar. No surprise, from the criminally underrated Night in the Ruts album. Besides the fact that this tune just rocks musically, I love the fact that Tyler's lyrics are completely autobiographical. It tells the story of how Aerosmith got their big break in the music business and started up the ladder to worldwide stardom. In 1971, Aerosmith was just another struggling rock band, although they were creating a little bit of a buzz. They managed to book a gig at the prestigious Max's Kansas City in New York with both Ahmet Ertegun and Clive Davis in attendance, both music industry giants. Well, apparently Ertegun thought the band sucked and had no interest, but Clive Davis felt otherwise. It's all right there in the lyrics. 1971, we all heard the starter's gun. New York was such a pity, but at Max's Kansas City we won. We all shot shit at the bar with Johnny O'Toole and his scar. And then old Clive Davis said he's surely gonna make us a star. I'm gonna make you a star just the way you are. By the end of the song, Tyler has shifted into that rapid fire, almost rap style vocal delivery that he was doing before just about anyone else. I definitely don't claim to understand all the references he's making here, but I'm sure there's probably some sordid explanation for all of it. Midnight Lady, situation fetal, vaccinate your ass with your phonograph needle. I say, looky here, friend of mine, you scratch like you need calamine. Flamingo boots, souls a-creakin', still in love, and Puerto Rican too. But undoubtedly the greatest and best known example of the Steven Tyler rap is Walk This Way, the band's signature song. The title came when the band had been to see the movie Young Frankenstein. There's a scene where Marty Feldman picks up Gene Wilder at a train station. He says, walk this way, and hobbles down some steps, and then Wilder walks down the same way. Now, apparently this came from an old Three Stooges joke. Who knew? But in reality, the song has nothing to do with all of that. Like most Aerosmith tunes, it's pure teen lust. Seesaw swinging with the boys in the school and your feet flying up in the air. Singing Hey Diddle Diddle with your kitty in the middle of the swing like you didn't care. So I took a big chance at the high school dance with a missy who was ready to play. It wasn't me that she was fooling, because she knew what she was doing when she told me how to walk this way.
Aurora borealis, the icy sky at night. Paddles cut the water in a long and hurried flight. From the white man to the fields of green. And the homeland we've never seen.
I think it's fascinating that Neil Young can write some of the most stark and literal lyrics. I'm thinking of things like Tonight's the Night or The Needle and the Damage Done. And then something as bizarre and surreal as that, Pocahontas from the Rust Never Sleeps album. The song's overarching theme deals with the plight of Native Americans. The first verse paints a vivid picture. Aurora borealis, the icy sky at night. Paddles cut the water in a long and hurried flight. From the white man to the fields of green. In the homeland we've never seen. In verse 2, Young jumps seamlessly to the present day. They massacred the buffalo, kitty corner from the bank. The taxis run across my feet, and my eyes have turned to blanks. In my little box at the top of the stairs, with my Indian rug and a pipe to share. But it's the third and fourth verses where things start to get weird and wonderful. I wish I was a trapper, I would give 1,000 pelts to sleep with Pocahontas and find out how she felt. In the morning, on the fields of green, in the homeland we've never seen. And the final verse, and maybe Marlon Brando will be there by the fire. We'll sit and talk of Hollywood and the good things there for hire. And the Astrodome and the first TP, Marlon Brando, Pocahontas and me. And in case you're wondering how Marlon Brando ended up in this song, some of you may remember that in 1973, Marlon Brando sent a Native American woman to the Academy Awards ceremony to decline his award for Best Actor. This was supposed to be some sort of protest against the way Native Americans had been portrayed in Hollywood films. Yet another clever way that Neil links the past to the present in this song. On the other end of the spectrum, we've got a song like Tonight's the Night, which I mentioned earlier. No question as to what Neil is singing about here. This song describes the phone call that Neil received, telling him that his friend and roadie Bruce Berry had OD'd on heroin. In one verse, just a few short lines, Neil manages to humanize this guy and make us feel for somebody we've never even met. Bruce Berry was a working man. He used to load that Econoline van. A sparkle was in his eye, but his life was in his hands. Well, late at night when the people were gone, he used to pick up my guitar and sing a song in a shaky voice that was real as the day was long. Really powerful stuff. That's it for now. Remember that you can contribute financially to the channel through Buy Me a Coffee or PayPal. There are links in the description of the video. And also, I would love to hear from you all on what types of videos you'd like to see going forward. Not sure what direction I'm going to go in next, so please let me know. Talk soon.